Welcome to the Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff. Fun show on tap for everyone at home today. Terron Armstead, he praised the new defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver, and we got to talk about what Armstead had to say. But also on the second half of today's show, should Miami trade for this offensive lineman, former second-round pick, to add to that right guard position? So stay tuned for that. But before we get into what Terron Armstead had to say, help me out by really helping you out. Share today's video to a friend, family member, or just share it on social media because we're trying to spread the word of Dolphins Today. And the more people that come in, subscribe, watch our videos, the more we can go live and hang out as Dolphins fans. So make sure you help me out by sharing today's show. Let's get into what Terron Armstead said on Anthony Weaver because he was very complimentary of the new defensive coordinator. Armstead said bringing in Weave from Baltimore, watching the defense in OTAs and minicamp was spooky. The looks, the disguises, the weapons that he has, and the way that he's using those guys, I love where we are. And that quote does nothing else other than fire me the heck up. When you have an offensive lineman speaking to the media about how good the defense looks, how different it looks from a year ago, because everyone knows if you flash back to 2023, that Dolphins defense, it had a lot of talent, and yes, they were riddled with injuries, but they underwhelmed under Vic Fangio. And a lot of people, including myself, are expecting a big bounce back with this Dolphins defense. And I like what I'm hearing. I like what I'm seeing through OTA's minicamp and from players on the defense, from players playing the defense in those mandatory minicamps, that this defense will have a very, very nice 24 season under Anthony Weaver. And if you've been a part of the show ever since I took over in late April before the NFL draft, you would know that I am very high on Anthony Weaver. I think he is going to be a phenomenal football coach because he has an excellent track record and was part of the Baltimore Ravens organization since 2021. And we all know they've had an excellent defense. But if we just look at Weaver's overall resume in the National Football League, he was a D-line coach for the Bills, then for the Browns, then for the Texans. And then he kind of came over to Baltimore where he was a run game coordinator, associate head coach, and defensive line coach. Like he has had a very similar role throughout the most of his NFL coaching career. And then he comes over to finally take that next step as a defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. And I did want to show some backstory on Weaver. And this is really just all about showcasing what Baltimore's kind of philosophy is, because you'd assume, since he's been there since 2021, that he's likely going to incorporate a lot of what Baltimore has been doing over the past couple seasons into the Dolphins defense. So Baltimore's base defense was ran out of 3-4, and if you remember, their defensive coordinator last season was Mike McDonald, who is now the head coach for the Seattle Seahawks. But I did want to showcase this statistic at the bottom here, and I think it's very important to realize this. The NFL is becoming more pass happy. It's very imperative to have more defensive backs, more speed on your defense to be able to cover these fast running backs out of the backfield, the tight ends, the evolution of wide receivers. And the Baltimore Ravens had 5 defensive back packages, so aka nickel, whether it be 3 corners, 2 safeties, 4 corners, 1 safety, either way. 5 defensive backs were on the field for the Ravens defense last year 79% of the time, which is a pretty above average percentage in the National Football League. So I would expect that Anthony Weaver will probably have a lot of nickel packages for the Dolphins, which means they need to have a lot of depth in the secondary, which luckily they do have some decent depth with Cater Cohoun, Nick Needham, Cam Smith, Marcus May being a signee. So that is a good part of this defense. And one of the best parts of the team is its secondary. I think Anthony Weaver is going to bring the juice, man. And what do I mean by bring the juice? Well, you heard what Terron Armstead said. And I know it was just a very limited look at that Dolphins defense in the 3 or 4 days they were in South Florida for mandatory minicamp. They'll get a nice up-close look in a couple of weeks when training camp gets underway. But we've heard other Dolphins defenders come out and talk to the media and talk about how he changes the looks, that changes the formations, the blitzes, the weaving type defense, no pun intended for his own name. Like, he will throw different stunts at you. He will throw the kitchen sink at you on a weekly basis. And he will, I think, always change his defense so other teams won't be able to scout him and say, well, Anthony Weaver likes to do this on third down. He likes to die up a blitz in this situation. I just don't think that's going to be the case. And I think Weaver has so much at his disposal in the front seven with Jordan Brooks, David Long, Anthony Walker Jr., Chop Robinson coming into the fold. Obviously, Chubbs, Phillips, Shaq Barrett, Calais Campbell, Zach Sealer. Like, they have so many names in that front seven where he's going to be able to throw everything out the window and change looks on a week-to-week basis and really get after the quarterback, which will only cause them to be confused and then throw it right into the hands of Kendall Fuller and Jalen Ramsey. I have very high hopes for this Dolphins defense in 2024. More to discuss here with Weaver, but get rowdy in the comments section. If you're with me and you want to show love to the new defensive coordinator of the Miami Dolphins, spam those AWs down below. I kind of mentioned it just a second ago, but I expect this Dolphins defense to bounce back in a big way and be an elite group in this upcoming NFL season. I think at bare minimum, it will be a top 10 group in the NFL. And that's even with people coming in and out of the lineup with injuries. But if this normal starting group is able to stay healthy for 15, 17 games, and yes, that's basically impossible, and you're asking for craziness to happen because people just don't stay healthy in the National Football League consistently as an entire defense. But if they do, I think this will be a top 5 group. Because when you think about what a projected starting defense would look like how could you not think this is the top 5 group? I think when you look at the squad, the 11 people, and this is a nickel base package. I know I said base is 3-4, but with 79% of the defensive snaps featuring 3 DBs, I kind of am going to go lean that way. Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, your 2 edge rushers, Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell inside, David Long Jr. and Jordan Brooks on the middle part of that defense with Jalen Ramsey, Kendall Fuller, Kader Kohu, Javon Holland, and Jordan Poyer on the back end. Like, that group, if they are able to stay healthy, will force turnovers, get after the quarterback, and I think they will be a top 10 group in the NFL and top 5 if they stay healthy. And the health is always the important factor, but when you think about what the Dolphins have at depth at the defensive line position, at linebacker, I think it will be something that could really benefit Weaver because he can move people in and out. And if someone goes down, you can have faith that the backup can come in and do a job. Like Anthony Walker Jr., to me, is one of the best third linebackers, if not the best third linebacker in all of football. You have Shaq Barrett, who has been a dominant edge rusher in the past, coming in rotation. First-round pick Chop Robinson, Mo Kamara. Like, the front seven is going to be absolutely lethal. And I get losing Christian Wilkins hurts, but with Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell being there, I think it's going to be a good enough replacement. I am very excited to watch this Dolphins defense terrorize opposing offenses every given Sunday. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we have daily coverage of the Miami Dolphins. And I mentioned I can't wait to watch the Dolphins play on Sundays with this new defense. Well, you're going to be able to watch with me because we're live every single game day for the Miami Dolphins. Doesn't matter when they play and who they play. We're going to be live, but we'll also have daily coverage of training camp on the channel. So make sure you hit that sub button because you won't want to miss anything surrounding your Miami Dolphins. Let's get into the second half of today's video on a potential trade. And this is that former second-round pick. Bleacher Report labeled Jackson Carman as a trade candidate, an offensive lineman on the Cincinnati Bengals, former second-round pick out of Clemson. And could Miami be interested in someone who has really failed to see the football field often in his early career? Well, let's talk about what Bleacher Report said on the offensive lineman. BR said the Bengals have tried to get Carman reps at guard and tackle, but the 24-year-old has struggled to get on the field. He played just 24 snaps over the past 2 seasons. Carman should still be viewed as a developmental player, but a team may be willing to take a flyer on the physical potential that made him a highly valued draft pick a few years ago. He's an intriguing target for any team looking to go bargain hunting for line depth. And I'll be honest, before we talk about Jackson Carman more in depth, I am intrigued. I mentioned he was a top 64 pick just 3 drafts ago. In 2021, the Bengals took a flyer on him in the second round out of Clemson. It has not panned out for him thus far, and he has really never been given the chance to be a full-time starter. Now, maybe he hasn't deserved to be it, and his practices are shit, but one could only hope that if the Dolphins were able to maybe go after him and trade for him, he can get into that starting right guard role and maybe beat out a Robert Jones, beat out a Jack Driscoll and the rest of the players on this roster competing for that role. We'll talk about more of that in just a second, but make sure you do get hooked up with this Dolphins t-shirt combo. Training camp is here. Preseason is about 2 weeks, 3 weeks away, and the regular season is about 7 weeks away as well. So make sure you're representing the Dolphins off the field with this Dolphins t-shirt combo. $25 off at chatsports.com/Dolphins combo. Links in the description and comments of today's show. Don't miss out because they're running out of sizes. Mediums, larges, extra larges, and 2Xs are the only ones left in stock. Get yours today. Links in the description and comments. I mean, I don't know how many times I'm going to have to say this, but when we shift our conversation back to the offensive line, the right guard position is just a glaring weakness on this roster. It's the biggest weakness on this roster, that specific position. I like what you have at tackle. I'm bullish on Brewer, and I think Isaiah Wynn, if he can stay healthy, can be a very solid average to above average left guard. But right guard is still an issue, and that is the biggest need on this entire team. You can go across every single starting position, every depth position. It doesn't matter. Starting right guard is the most important to me. And I'm only curious to see if Jackson Carman, on a cheap trade, could fill that role. Well, it's unfortunate because we have to go all the way back to Carman's rookie season to really evaluate the player. Because he, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, has only played in 24 snaps over the past 2 years. But as a rookie in 2021, he played in 462 snaps. And I want to make this abundantly clear that 342 snaps of them came at right guard. So when he played in 2021, he was he played the position of need that Miami has at right guard. So he's used to that position when he's on the field. But you saw the numbers on screen. It's not like he was putting up really, really good numbers according to PFF. He didn't allow a sack, but he had 5 penalties. Only put up an overall PFF grade of 56.3, was a better run blocker, struggled in the pass blocking department. Like, these numbers aren't great. I'm not going to try to tell you they're good. But like we mentioned, he had enough upside and physical traits and a potential to get him drafted in the second round. So could Miami go back to that talent and take a flyer by trading a late draft pick in the future to try to get someone into this room to compete with Robert Jones, Jack Driscoll, and the rest of the company for right guard? I think it's a possibility that Chris Grier will actually kind of go down that avenue and see if it's possible. But let me know. Be Chris Grier. Would you trade for Jackson Carman? You might not even know who Jackson Carman is. I was unfamiliar with his game prior to this morning and reading up on him. But let me know. Type Y for yes or type N for no. You might ask yourself, well, what would it cost? Bleacher Report had this. They suggested it would cost probably a conditional 2026 7th-round pick, which means it would be a 2026 7th with the potential of it maybe getting upgraded to a 6th based on playing time, incentives, blah, 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 blah. But if I'm going to be honest, that is absolutely no value. So to me, I'll take the chance. Like, would I rather take a flyer on Jackson Carman to start at right guard and only send a conditional 7th, a former 2021 first-round pick or second-round pick, or would I rather have Lester Cotton compete for that right guard spot? Probably going to take the flyer on the former second-round pick since it would cost you absolutely nothing to acquire him in a trade. So I actually am taking a flyer on Jackson Carman, and I would have been typing my Ys to that question I just asked you a couple minutes ago. But to finish out today's show and kind of round out the conversation on right guard for at least today, I want to give you my expectations on what Chris Grier is going to do on that spot heading into training camp. I truly believe, at least to this point, that the Dolphins are set and not going to make any signings, at least, at right guard or really on the offensive line going into training camp. I think they're going to wait and see what they have in Robert Jones, Jack Driscoll, Liam Eichenberg, and you can throw Lester Cotton in there. They're going to compete in training camp. They're going to compete in the first couple preseason games, and then they'll make a decision on that roster spot after the fact, where maybe they like what they see out of a Driscoll or a Robert Jones. And like, you know what, we are comfortable with one of them being the starting right guard in week 1 against Jacksonville. Or they look at it the other way and say, shit, like, these guys are not cut out to be a starting right guard in the NFL. This would be a disaster. And they either go try to sign a Greg Van Roten if he's still available, or go make a trade or pick up someone who just missed a roster on a different team around the NFL. That's kind of how I view Chris Grier is viewing the right guard position himself, at least up to this point. All right, that will do it for today's show. Make sure you are following me on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff. By the way, I asked you to share the video earlier in the show. If you share the video on Twitter and tag me at Nic_Rohloff, I'll give you a follow back. But also follow me because I'm tweeting about the Fins on a daily basis. We'll see you with the video tomorrow. As always, go Fins.